Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Broke Family Finally Gets Money for Central Air Conditioning. So we grew up quite poor, any car we had was well past its due date, so Dad and I were under the cars most weekends. We did the one air conditioner in my parents' room with 3 kids sleeping on the floor most summers, but I and my brother had just hit our teen years, and that's a bit awkward, as you might imagine. Somehow with extra work on weekends, fixing other people's cars at night, my dad scrapes together enough money for central air conditioning. We kids were freaking out, not having to sleep in Mum and Dad's room. Cool. So Dad calls a bunch of people and chooses XX to do the job. He needs 2/3 of the money up front to purchase the unit. Blah blah. So my dad forks over the money and gets a receipt of some type, and we eagerly await Monday morning. And wait. Lots of phone calls, messages left and questions asked. No responses. So this is before the Google era, but we managed to track down his office, and I'm a feisty 16-year-old who is filled with righteous indignation that this business screwed my parents. We show up to the building, go inside and up to his floor and knock on the door, nobody home. I look under the door, and all I can see in the room is a phone and answering machine plugged into the wall. No other furniture in the room. Now I'm freaked because that money is gone. If this guy doesn't come back, how are we going to get our money? So then we go to the building manager to ask about the person who rents that office and told him our story. The guy couldn't care less, refuses to give out info. My dad thinks for a while, and when we get home he calls a friend who he's done work for, who may or may not have ties with a certain telephone company. My dad hands me a name of the guy who rents the office. From that I went to the library to look up the house address of the person with this name. I go home and get my dad and off we go. So you've got 2 very worked up angry people ready to try and scare this guy into giving us our money back, while we'd never actually be violent, but to act like it, well, maybe. Pound, pound, pound on the front door, ring, ring, ring. The door opens, and it's a little old lady who's suitably freaked out, to say the least. We're looking for ZZ of company XX, we have business with him. She answers us with something that makes our blood boil. Oh, you just missed him, he got married and is taking his wife on a honeymoon to Hawaii for 2 weeks. He took our money for a honeymoon? Now it was a lot of money to my folks, but I'm certain he needed more money than what he took from us to spend a couple weeks in Hawaii, so I go back to his office and post a sign on his door with my number on it, asking anyone to call if they had been suckered by this guy. I think it ended up being 5 or 6 people who called in the end. I probably missed some as they may have been there already. So I go back to the little old lady, and told her what her son had done, and showed her the list of people who he had robbed. I told her that he'd better call me the day he got back, or I'd be giving her address to everyone and we'd all be looking for our money. ZZ returns, apologizes and says he just needed enough to take his wife away on honeymoon, like that was a great excuse. Begged for some time to get the money together. I give him a couple days. I was so proud to hand my parents their money back. Ellipsis. And even more proud to write out the address and full name of the creep who ripped us off on his office door, and called every number that had called me and told them to, so that everyone would have a chance at getting their money back too. The next one is titled, Greedy Landlord Went One Step Too Far. My story appears to match many here in that a person in the wrong breaking the law continues to take bolder actions to the point where it is in such excess that it causes the whole situation to blow up in his face. Background: college student living in a college city. Lived in the dorms first year, then in an apartment in the next years. In our college town, city you had to pay a finder's fee to the current tenant to move in. This was essentially paying them their deposit when you moved in, as there was not any formal rental contract. There were literally flyers up listing apartments with rent and the finder's fee on campus. So this was standard practice. Anyway, a buddy and I moved into one apartment middle of our second year, in a triplex where 2 of the 3 roommates had moved, all 3 in one of the apartments. The third guy had been living there for a number of years, had done undergrad and grad school there, and was the contact point for the landlord. We paid him and he paid the full rent. Note that this was not a sublet, just that we paid in total in one check. This is important. So our third roommate moves, graduates, and hands over the utilities, landlord info, etc. to me to handle before the start of summer. He had gone through a few landlords over this time and has not had a new lease contract for years. So I take over and pay the bills during the summer. I became the POC, utilities in my name, important later for legal standing, and I was paying the rent, also important. Note you were stuck paying summer rent to keep a good apartment close to campus. So we paid for the apartment for the summer. Start of the chess match, so fall hits and school starts. We get a call for the landlord. He says he didn't know anything about us and wanted us out. If we pay more rent, we can stay. So our rent goes up from $750 to $900 with 10 days verbal notice. So we suck it up since we can't move now, too late, and we paid all summer just to have the place. And the extra was not that bad. Keep in mind this was when minimum was $3.25 per hour, so $150 is still a hit for 3 poor college students. Yes, this is from a while ago. So then as the semester gets to an end, the landlord then decides he wants to raise the rent to like $1,500 or $2,000 or he will evict us. He gives us 30 days notice to get out over Christmas break if we will not pay. None of us could cover that amount, 2x 3x where we started, we were all on financial aid. Well, after talking to some people, we find out we should look into the rent control laws. Check, well, guess who has not properly registered or followed any rent control laws? Yep, this landlord. So we spend $500 on a lawyer and end up going to rent control court. Guess what the rent control board hates? Yep, greedy landlords that clearly break all the laws. Coming out of this hearing, we win big. Due to the rent check and utility billing, we are found to be tenants even though we do not have a written contract. That was our biggest worry on our claim. Landlord is punished for not being registered or in compliance for years, well really at all. So our rent is reduced to the original rent control amount. And it is retroactive. So our rent becomes $300 from the day we moved in. Oh, and we cannot be evicted just because the landlord feels like it. So doing the math, he owed us $6,000 in overcharges for the past year, and would only collect 30% of the current rate going forward. And of course he also had a bunch of fines to pay the board. I don't remember, but I think it was more than what he owed us. So our new rent of $300 gets paid into an escrow account. It will get released once he pays the fines and us our $6,000. Well, like 6 months go by and I don't think he paid the fines. He did not pay us. And he is not collecting rent. Finger still on the king, but he is not done yet. Obviously renting any of the other units will be a problem for him rent-wise. So he then decides to play by the rules and serve an eviction notice for us based on one of the permissible rules. He is moving into the unit and taking it off the market. We know it is total bullshit, but it's in the rules. We can call him on it, but then we will start spending $s on a lawyer battle he can outlast us on. He has money and is losing money every day we are there. So we propose a compromise. And the king falls, we settle out of court. He agrees to a 1-year lease with us at $300 per month. We will move out in a year, end of school, graduation for all 3 of us. He also signs over the escrow account to us and waives all owed rent to date. In the end, we saved $16,000. It was glorious. And we got 100% of our deposit, finder's fee, as part of our settlement agreement. And we stayed until graduation. Oh, and he did not rent out the other unit during this time, so he was out an additional $10,000, $15,000. Keep in mind this was an investment property, so I assume the property value dropped for the reduced income. Edit, just looked up property history on Zillow, and 3 years after this occurred the triplex sold for $300,000. So the rent collected from the units would have covered a mortgage, so he just wanted to print money. The next one is titled, Summer Job That Led to the Closure of 4 Restaurants. I, 22 female, got my first job when I was 16 at a specialty restaurant with 5 locations. I worked at the busiest location. It was summer at the time, so I was working 5 days a week from 12 n. 10 p.m. The restaurant is set up like Panda Express, Manchu Wok or those other Asian restaurants in food courts where the food is laid out and you pick what you want from the selection, except it's not in a food court and has its own seating, so more like a cafeteria, IKEA setup. My job is to serve people their food, cashier, and some minor prep. By 1 p.m., all the cooks have left. I am left with a dishwasher, busboy until closing. 3 weeks have passed and I haven't gotten paid anything. Turns out, the owner, whom I've met a couple of times, is spending all her revenue in the casino and a lot of staff aren't getting paid. Some employees have worked here for years and have over $5,000 of unpaid work. I talked to the owner and she said I can take my daily income from the cash register, cash, no tax, after I do all my closing as long as I write everything down. I didn't care at this time as long as I was getting paid. I didn't know much about the law either since it was my first job. But I did provide them my SSN, so I was hired legally to my knowledge. The manager that hired me never mentioned cash payments when she hired me. I was getting my pay from the till for about a week until one of my coworkers found out. Obviously she got jealous and told everyone. Since these people have thousands of unpaid work, they felt like it was unfair that I was getting paid and they weren't. At this time, the owner was out of country, so I stopped taking my pay from the till to avoid getting in conflict with my coworkers. I mean, the owner will pay me eventually, right? I was young, naive, and did not know better. During one of my shifts, a delivery came in and they wanted to get paid on the spot. I did not have cash on the till, and I couldn't get a hold of my coworkers to deal with the situation, so the delivery guy eventually left with all the products. That night, the owner's husband gave me a call and he was furious that we did not get the delivery since we needed it for tomorrow because we're low on products. He dropped by to leave cash for the delivery and made me wait until 12 midnight for the delivery to come, unpaid. I was left by myself in the restaurant, and I was crying. It was a very stressful situation for me, and working here led me to smoke cigarettes. I don't smoke anymore. This was my breaking point. I wanted to quit but I was afraid that I wouldn't get all my hard-earned money. The job is easy but all the coworker drama and the shitty treatment of the owners got to me. I kept working in this location until the end of summer, with over $3,000 of unpaid work, not adjusted with overtime and holiday pay. I did eventually get to talk to the owner on the phone and all I got was, "It is what it is." I did not show up for work on the last day of summer. After I didn't show up, I filed a claim with the Department of Labor and Ministry of Labor. When school started, the manager from their other location asked me to come work for her on weekends. Of course I said no, but eventually agreed when she said that I will be paid after my shift with cash. The owner never came here to take the revenue for her gambling, and she's still out of the country, so I did get paid after my shift. Everyone that worked here was a lot nicer too, since everyone was getting paid. I asked my unemployed friends to drop off their resumes. The owner did not know that I was friends with these people, and she eventually hired one of my friend as a dishwasher, busboy to work with me. The manager leaves early on weekends, and it's just me and my friend in the restaurant, so I would give out food to my friends, customers that I know, and family, for free. Not my food cost, so I did not give a duck. I know it's a whole move, but keep in mind the $3,000 that they still owe me. Everyone that worked here knows all the bullshit that's happening. Business has always been doing great, to the point that the owner was able to have 5 locations. Everyone was getting paid on time and were given bonuses during the first few years of the business, until the owner started going to the casino. Her attitude changed, and stopped taking care of the business. She would even get mad at the employees for paying the bills, instead of keeping the cash for her gambling. We've had times that our electricity got cut off and couldn't operate as a restaurant. Producers, suppliers are also refusing to deliver products unless we paid right away. They aren't getting paid on time as well. The owner mainly ever goes to the restaurant locations to take cash. Her husband does most of the work, and even takes cash out of his pocket to pay for the restaurant expenses. From what I've heard, their marriage went down the sewage since the wife started gambling, and coming home from the casino without her car. There were also rumors that the husband cheated that led to the wife's gambling problems. I believed all the rumors since it all made sense at the time, but no confirmation until now. I also found out that one of their locations had to close down because they did not pay the lease. They're now left with 4. We're the only second location I'm working at where the staff gets paid on time. Except for the manager, who also have unpaid wages from years before, and my $3,000 from summer. Everyone else here is new and are getting paid on time. 2 weeks have passed since I worked part-time at the other location. I started getting calls from the labor department about my claim. I told them everything. Staff not getting paid or the owner is paying cash. Plus all the shitty treatment that I did not mention above. Of course the government doesn't like it when we don't pay our taxes. I kept a record of my hours in my notebook. I also had text messages from my co-workers about the working conditions of this place. I kept working here while my claim was being processed, and while the owner is out of the country. Eventually they got the letter a couple of days after the owner came back and she was enraged. How do you have the audacity to work here after you file a claim against us? She wasn't aware that I didn't show up for my shift when I was working at the first location, and was hired by the manager in the current location. So I got fired. I went on with school, and eventually got paid $5,000 plus for my unpaid hours, and the trouble. The labor department gave them crap as well for not paying a minor. It seemed like they were taking advantage. That was basically my first paycheck. Quite a lot of money for a 16 years old. I started working at a food court elsewhere, totally legal, it's a franchise. One day I was approached by one of the cook at the first location who recognized me. They all knew what I did and that I got paid, and he wanted to know how to file a claim. I told him everything, what he needs to do, and all the proof, evidence that he can provide. I also told him that whoever files a claim will get paid, and I encouraged him to tell everyone. 2 months later, my friends that knew about the situation started tagging me on an article posted on Facebook about the restaurant. Over 4 people have filed for a claim, and the owner is forced to pay over $50,000 plus for unpaid wages, overtime and interest, plus $2,500 plus administrative fees. I later on found out that they got audited, and more people started filing for claims. A lot of people that worked there before and is still owed their wages also filed for a claim. A food inspection in one of the other locations uncovered several serious health and sanitation infractions. All 4 of their locations eventually shut down. I know it's not an intentional revenge. And the restaurant could have closed down anytime due to their debts. Although my friends still joke about it to this day that I added fuel, spark to the fire, kindle that led to the closure of all their remaining locations. I'm just glad I got my hard-earned money. The next one is titled, Lady, I'm Not a Wall. Last week I got off work and took the bus home. It was rush hour and I had to wait for the 5th bus to be able to step in. I found a place beside a girl, put my backpack between my feet while people pushed to get in. The doors closed and I had some space to breathe. Next stop, this lady got on the other side of the girl. She was not young but definitively not old. I'm guessing around 50, but she checked all the boxes of a woman that plays the older card to get her way. As the time and stops passed by, the girl pushed against me more and more. I was having some trouble breathing normally, but I could see the lady was taking up space and forcing the girl against me. 8 stops later the girl got off and the bus pretty much emptied, leaving the lady beside me. I was still about 10 stops from home, and with every passing minute I could feel the lady laying against me, not even trying to hide it. I tried pushing back a bit to let her know, but she was playing dumb, I guess. Now, the last 3 weeks I've been having crazy hours because some changes on personal at work and was not on the greatest of moods. Also, I hate people that use their age as an excuse to being a holes. I'm 26, female but look 15. So I stopped pushing back or moving aside and let her put all her weight on me. When I saw she was no longer holding onto something to keep her balance, I just took a step away from her and watched her fall to the floor. I just turned my head to her and laughed a bit. Taking her face as reference, I'm guessing she said something, but I was wearing headphones, so just smiled at her and turned away. I got off on my stop and it was raining cats and dogs. I took out my umbrella and quickly made my way out. Waiting on the light change, I see the lady walking under the rain, completely wet. I made eye contact with her and laughed, crossed the street where my brother was waiting for me in the car. I got on while she stood online waiting for a taxi. It was a good day. The last one is titled, I exposed my teacher's infidelity and ruined her career. So, back when I was in 8th grade, I had this horrible witch of a teacher. She would yell at us for the littlest things. Coughing in class. She yells. Scratching your nose? Definite yell. Plus, she graded your work on whether or not you were good. Unfortunately, her definition of good was not being yelled at by her. So, 90% of our class received marks 10 less than they were supposed to be. We wanted to complain, but we were powerless. This teacher was at our school for 12 years, so she had a lot of power amongst the staff. Even the principal didn't bat an eye when a student's mother complained about the teacher's horrible work ethic. Unfortunately for the mum, he was more focused on the school's image, so he gave the teacher a one-day probation, and swept the complaint under the rug. We didn't think much of this, as we already knew the principal was a spineless coward. But this becomes important later. Anyway, after that incident, the teacher calmed down a bit. She yelled less and graded more fairly. But this came to an end a month later. A student was in the bathroom as her period came. She rushed to class, but by the time she came in, class had already started. Mind you, the bell hadn't rung yet, but the teacher didn't care and had already locked the door. When the girl came, the teacher wouldn't let her in as, and I quote, she had to teach the troublemakers a lesson. She thought that she was doing this girl's favor by not letting her in. Now, this girl was very popular in our class, she was nice to everyone, even the quiet kids. She helped kids with their homework and had a perfect attendance record. However, her parents were super strict, as they wanted her to go to a specialized high school. She was going to take the SHSAT, Specialized High Schools Admissions Test for students to get into good high schools, and she needed to have a perfect attendance record in order to qualify. So imagine her fear when the teacher wouldn't let her in. The entire class was furious at the teacher, but we knew that we couldn't do anything. At least not yet. I did some snooping at home and found her old Facebook account. I checked her oldest photos and came across one that caught her eye. It was a photo of her with the principal at a bar, making out. It suddenly made sense to me as to why the principal never did anything concerning the teacher. This was perfect blackmail material. But it gets better. I checked the date, and lo and behold, it was dated June 12, 2017. I distinctly remember that teacher telling us that she and her husband were married for 20 years. This means that not only was she having a relationship with her boss, but she was doing so while cheating on her husband. Gleefully, I took a screenshot of the pic, and sent it to the class server on Discord. The comments went apecrap. People were posting gifs of cats happily dancing around, while others planned ideas of sending it to their parents. With their help, I managed to airdrop a copy of the pic to the entire school. Within hours, it had made the news, and the teacher and principal were fired indefinitely. The husband took her to court and divorced her, leaving her unemployed and without a house. Her husband had paid for it. No one would let her in and she was shunned from the community. Now, she spends her days at the corner store, avoiding glares from all the customers. As for the principal, he couldn't bear the shame, and fled south. Last I heard, he was flipping burgers at a gas station. Thanks for listening.